Good evening, Senators. The Committee of the Whole is now back to order. We are on Amendment JSSA L22P40. Senator Sinopsky,
Point of order,
you are
Mr. Chair. Point of
recognized.
order.
I
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
I recognize you on a point of order, Senator.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to ask if we're going to bring the panel in as we had before the recess. And the second point of order is that my amendment is next before Senator San Augustine's. It's been in the drive at 6:07 p.m. His is 9:28 a.m. the next day. So I'd ask that we entertain my amendment in the order as you made a rule that we were going to do that order.
Senator, the panel is not required for this next amendment. It is materially the same as other amendments that we have passed in this legislature in a budget session. So I have ruled that the panel is not necessary for this.
For the panel?
Yes, we will have no panel tonight. Senator, once again, the appropriation contemplated in your amendment was predicated on the prior amendment passing. It did not pass.
Yep.
And so, and I have it on record, and so I'm ruling this amendment out of order.
Mr. Chair, point of order.
Okay.
The funding source is valid, and that was your rule. You would rule them out of order if we didn't have a valid funding source. This one is valid. This one is for the businesses, is to pay businesses that in good faith have been giving services and products to GMH and have been unpaid for over 90 days. And we can vote it down, but we can't ignore the amendments that have been put in order, Mr. Chair. So I just ask that you just follow the rule and we just dispose of it. If they don't like it, they can vote on it, yes or no.
Senator,
But
do you
ignore it when there's a valid funding source, that was your rule, Mr. Chair. That if it has a valid funding source, it won't be ruled out of order.
Senator, I will entertain a motion to overrule the chair.
I just don't know why you're changing the rules, Mr. Chair, if there's a valid funding source.
Senator, I will entertain a motion to overrule the chair.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I just have a point of inquiry.
Sure.
So the way the rules of engagement are is that we have to turn in the amendment prior to the opening of the chapter. Is that correct?
That is correct, Senator.
Okay. So maybe perhaps if, I guess it's a request to consider that we cannot predict the outcomes in advance. And so maybe the request is to ask for leeway to make amendments to our amendment so that in response to changes on the fly, should, once the chapter opens, we have no control over, what's left in a fund, and perhaps new information might come to light on another source of funding. So I think my request is to ask for reconsideration about providing more flexibility for the sponsor of an amendment.
Mr. Chair, point of order. Is this is she asking for a reconsideration or is she asking for a point of information?
Thank you for your point of order. I will continue to ascertain the motion, and then I will make a ruling. Thank you, Senator Gumadalto.
Okay, yeah, so it's a point of inquiry as to whether moving forward, considering the restrictions of changing an amendment once a chapter opens, so that I guess, yeah, my request is if you can clarify,
Senator,
if there's
sure.
opportunities for flexibility.
Sure. Senator, I have already clarified that I have the recording of the senator when I was, Senator Terlai, when I was contemplating both amendments, that I was going to rule one out of order because they had the same funding source and I didn't want two of them to be there. And I can play it for the body if you want. And the senator corrected me by saying, you need to predicate one to the other, which means I have to do the one that she submitted first before the second one. The first one failed, so the second one is non-germane at this point. So I've answered your question and your inquiry, Senator, and I will not change my ruling. Senator Talal, you recognize, are you asking to override the chair?
Mr. Chair, I'm asking the chair to follow his own rule. There's no such rule that amendment will be out of order for any other reason except that it doesn't have a funding source. So this one has a funding source. There should be no problem. I just don't, I object to the rules being changed, and particularly on my amendment. This is so simple. It's excess funds. Everybody else, we have to put in many because the excess funds keep changing. So this one is in case that other one failed. Yes, we're going to try again to pay the businesses for the excess funds. Mr. Chair, there's no other rule to rule this out of order.
Senator, are you asking to motion to overrule the chair?
I think it's unfair, Mr. Chair, that we have to overrule you on a ruling that doesn't even follow the rules.
Senator, I'm trying to ascertain the will of the body. If you have prevailed on your argument, that's the only way to restore order. The only
Mr.
way
Chair,
to
does
move
this
forward with
rule
order.
violate your rule that there's no funding source?
It violates the rule because of the predication that the prior amendment failed. Senator,
It's a separate
I will-
amendment,
Yeah,
Mr.
Senator,
Chair.
Senator, I will continue to classify my ruling. I've ruled. Are you ruling to overrule the chair? Do you have a motion to overrule the chair? That is the only way to have order. If it's the will of the body, then you shall secure the votes.
I'm going to make a motion that, notwithstanding the ruling of the chair on a random rule that he did not state in the beginning of our proceedings, that my colleagues, whether you like me or you don't like me, that we're going to be governed by rules, that we are not going to change the rules in the middle of the game, that one amendment failed, this one is a new amendment, it's before the next amendment, it should be treated in this, as the chairperson said, in the order of the amendments as they are submitted. I don't understand why we're going to depart from that, and I'm asking you as my colleagues to, if we can't adhere to rules that we provide fairly to everybody else, how do we expect the public to act? This is for GMH. There's no harm in considering this amendment. It might take you 5 minutes, that's it. But it's a big deal for vendors. Over $25 million worth of goods and services that have not been provided to GMH, still owed to GMH. Businesses, the same businesses that you want to take care of by rolling back BPT are the businesses that are due
Mr. Chair?
from GMH.
Point of order, there was a motion on the floor. Can we vote on that motion?
I recognize your point of order, and thank you. It is superior to the other point of order.
Point of inquiry, Mr. Chair.
The point of order needs to be disposed of first because it rises above the point of inquiry.
Thank you,
On
Mr.
the
Chair.
point of order, is everybody in favor of the point of order? Please indicate by raising your hand.
The motion to overrule the chair.
Motion to overrule the chair, yes. Please raise your hand on the point of order. Yes. Yes. So, Senator,
I was
Vice
in the middle
Speaker-
of that, Mr. Chair,
Vice
when I
Speaker
was
Tony
interrupted.
Yata has raised a point of order so that we can move forward with order to say that, Senator, are you making a motion, because I've already ruled, to overrule the chair?
Yes, I was in the middle of that when I was interrupted, Mr.
Senator,
Chair.
so there is a motion.
I am making that
there is a
motion. I'm not
motion
done,
to-
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, is there going to be a motion so we can proceed with the proceedings here this
Senator, do
evening,
you
sir?
have a motion to
Yes,
overrule the chair?
I have been making that,
Okay,
Yes,
so
I
the
have been
motion is-
making that
and
motion,
you've
and my
had-
motion again,
and
I'll
you've had
repeat
plenty
it,
of
is
time
to
to
overrule the
extemporaneous
chair
make
and
remarks.
ask the chair to abide by the rules that he laid out to the body before we began our proceedings, and again before each chapter, where he asked us to make sure there's a funding source.
There is
And
a
if we have
motion
done
to
that
overrule
or
the
not
chair.
done that, that would be out of order. But if we've done that, there's no reason for my amendment to be
There is
out
a
of order.
motion.
It was put in the drive
Mr. Chair, can we
before
vote on the motion?
any
The motion
other
has been made.
motion.
There is a motion to overrule the chair. All in favor to overrule the chair, please indicate by raising your hand. Motion fails. Senator San Augustine, you are recognized, and I will read out the amendment that you have
Point of
proffered.
inquiry, Mr. Chair.
I recognize you, Senator, on a point of inquiry.
Si just Masi, Mr.
Buen
Chair.
provecho, yes.
The point of inquiry is, I'm inquiring if you could state the rule that says if a proffer of an amendment's first amendment fails, the second amendment is somehow automatically non-germane. Are you able to cite that rule, Mr. Chair?
The chair has the privilege of ruling out of order, and I've ruled out of order. Senator San Augustine, you
Point of
are now
inquiry,
recognized.
Mr. Chair, so there's no rule? You're just-
The rule is the chair has the gavel, the chair can rule, and there's been a motion to overrule the chair, and there is not sufficient votes to overrule the chair.
It's
That is-
inconsistent and farcical, Mr. Chair.
Yeah,
I'd
thank
ask
you.
for some consistency.
Thank you, Senator. We are moving along with the business of the people, and so I'm now recognizing Senator Joe San Augustine on his amendment. Senator San Augustine, JSSA L22 P40, small letter A, and Senator San Augustine, you are now
Point of order,
recognized
Mr. Chair.
on your
Are we going to get the
amendment.
panel in here for this amendment?
I've already
Very needed for
Yes,
this
I've-
amendment.
I've already indicated, Senator, that because of the prior precedent set in the current fiscal year of appropriating first-line revenues, we do not need the panel here because we have set that precedent. Senator San Augustine, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make it clear, I don't need the panel here, okay? So let's move along. My
Mr.
amendment
Chair,
is
sorry,
for,
I hate to interrupt, but point of order, you said we were going to have the panel, and if we weren't, we could have asked them questions before they left, Mr. Chair. But you assured us that they would be here. This is an amendment different than any that we've done so far. And we
Thank
need
you.
to know whether the funds actually exist, and that the panel is the one that confirms that for us, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for your continued providing information. Senator, we need to allow the mover to move the amendment so that if you have some further questions on it, fine. But I have ruled that the amendment is intact on a precedent that this legislature set in the fiscal 2025 budget. Senator San Augustine, you are recognized on your amendment.
thank you, Mr. Chair. My amendment is on line 22, page 40. And it's to add a new section on chapter 3, part 1 of the bill to read. Section, I guess the section would be created, would be section 4, net unobligated fiscal year 2026 general fund balance appropriation, notwithstanding any other provision of law. Currently, the amendment you have in front of you says the sum of. I'd like to ask that it be amended to read the first, striking out sum of, the first $20 million from the net unobligated fiscal year 2026 general fund balance is appropriate to the Guam Memorial Hospital Authority for operation expense for fiscal year 2026. And for my colleagues, just to understand this, we know what the unobligated fiscal funds will be a month after the month passed. So we won't know exactly how much money is there, but I believe I've heard this already all day. GMH needs funds, and I'm saying let's obligate the first $20 million that comes in, the first $20 million that comes in 2026, and it'll go to GMAs so it can take care of all the other expenses because they need help. That's the bottom line. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I ask my colleagues for their support.
Sure. Senator San Augustine, just so I'm clear are you now proffering an amendment to your amendment, or are you going to proffer that later?
That's correct. Just proffering the amendment now, just to strike out the sum of and put first.
Okay, so where we're at, colleagues, is the gentleman has entered his amendment, and he's proffered an amendment to the amendment. So what we will consider now is his amendment to the amendment. On the amendment to the amendment, from the proffer of the main amendment, are there anyone senators wish to speak?
What is the amendment to the amendment?
Do you yield, Senator?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. You strike out the word sum of and you replace it with the word first. So it'll say the first $20 million. Okay, Mr. Chair?
Is the body clear on the amendment to the amendment? So now we are discussing the amendment to the main amendment proffered by the good senator from Jigo, Senator Joe San Agustin. On that amendment to the amendment, Senator and Ranking Member Senator Tina Muñoz-Barnes, you are recognized.
Sijus Masi, Mr. Chair, and the way I understand it is based on the amendment to the proffer's original amendment, which is notwithstanding any other provisions of law, the first 20 million from the net unobligated fiscal year 2026 general fund balance is appropriated to GMH for the operational expenses for fiscal year 26. Mr. Chair, I support this intent. I think that we are showing that we understand the criticalness of the hospital, and that the obligations, the unobligated fund for fiscal year 2026, that if there's anything extra there, it goes straight to the hospital. So I stand in support of this efforts, and I ask my colleagues to please consider and vote in favor of this amendment. Sijus Masi.
Sijus Masi, Ranking Member Senator Tina Muñoz-Barnes. On the amendment to the amendment as proffered by the author, is there anyone who wishes to speak on that amendment to the amendment? Senator San Agustin, you may close on your amendment to the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's no need to close. We just move on and hopefully we'll pass this amendment.
Excellent.
As amended.
Excellent. On the amendment to the amendment, are there any objections? Seeing and hearing none, amendment to the amendment passes. We are now on the main amendment as proffered by the good senator from Jigo. Senator Tidegui, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I don't think I've ever seen anything where we've appropriated, and unless some of the senior senators that have been here have gone through budgets before, can tell me how we can appropriate for the next year when we haven't even finished the FY25. You know, we don't even know what July's CRR report for FY25, July, August, or September. And here we are limiting ourselves with that 4 million, right, for June. And I'm just anticipating what's going to happen in, like I said, July, August, September. We don't even know what that number is, right? I mean, earlier I asked Mr. Chair, I asked you what money that we were looking at, and it was 30 million, and it was based on June.
Mr. Chairman, point of information.
I recognize you on a point of information, Senator San Agustin.
On the last budget that we passed, the first 9 million went to Chamorro Land Trust when we passed the budget, and it was for a year we haven't even started. So just a little bit of information on that one. So this is no different. This is just something we just did.
Yes, I remember that amendment.
Point
Senator Tidegui.
point of information, Mr. Speaker. That amendment said collected the amount $9 million collected in excess of the adopted revenue levels enumerated in the Revenue Chapter 1 as reported in the first quarter consolidated expenditure report. This is very different. It's coming from the general fund balance for FY26. That's why I think we need the panel here, Mr. Chair, as you promised.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Tidegui, you have the floor.
Thank you, and I appreciate, the information that's been given to me, and if we did give money to Chamorro Land Trust prior to the end of a fiscal year and obligated it, but then again, we heard again from Senator from Jonia, that it's substantially different. So, Mr. Chair, I'm not asking for DOA or, a BBMR, but if OFB, which I know they're still here, if OFB can come in and it kind of, since they were there last year too, can kind of tell us if this amendment is very similar to what we did last year. My only concern, Mr. Chair, is that the governor sees this and strikes it out and gives the excuse that, oh, this is revenue that hasn't even been met. We're not even in fiscal year 2026. So I just want to be safe about this, and if OFB can come in, at least explain to us if this is doable, it's been done before like last year, and if it was true to form about the verbiage.
We'll stand in recess to bring in Office of Finance and Budget. We are in recess. The committee of the whole is back in order. Senator Taitigui, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, while we were waiting for OFB, I went myself to look to verify if this is something that we've done in the past. And yes, I've noticed in the last fiscal year, in FY25, we appropriated $9 million from excess revenue collected on a quarterly basis until such collections met $9 million. So it's something that we've done in the past. That was my question, so I answered that myself. But with OFB here now, the amount that we would see this would, in other words, this would take precedence even over FY24 obligations. You know how in what happened in 2023, FY23, we were at negative, the CRE report was negative 308 million because, and then they ended up paying some of those prior obligations in 24. So if we were to move on this, if we had prior obligations, because the good author put first up, would that money go to the hospital? Because by saying first, the first 20 million in the net unobligated FY26, that will go directly to the hospital. So any other prior year obligations in FY25 will not be able to meet. That's just my only question there.
Senator, my response to basically what the amendment is trying to do is to whatever sums up to $20 million is collected in excess of the FY26 adopted revenues based on this amendment. The intent of this is to be appropriated to GMH.
First, right.
Yes. Now, anything prior year, any type of outstanding payments, payables, all that kind of stuff, wouldn't really apply to any of the excess simply because it's either going to be addressed through current legislation or authorization that authorizes the agencies and departments who have these prior years to utilize their maybe carryover funds or their current year appropriations to cover those expenses. So those carryover obligations won't necessarily affect the FY26.
Well, I'm not talking about carry obligations with
No,
the
but
agencies.
but
I'm talking about, excess revenue that's come in excess, not lapses.
you mentioned about paying prior year obligations.
Yeah, which is excess revenue. I mean, like one CRER report had a list of all public laws that we appropriated funding for.
Yes.
Some of them have yet still to be completed or
Yes.
paid out, right? So my question again is, in FY26, when we go into that year and if there's any excess revenue, does this money clearly go to GMH or is it still obligated from prior year law obligations?
Senator, if we're talking about excess 26 revenues, it has nothing to do with
doesn't
prior
apply.
year. Yeah, it has nothing to do with prior year
Okay.
public laws authorization because those were already funded at the time they were authorized.
Okay, and that was my question, very simple like that. So it would not jeopardize this 20 million going to the hospital. Okay, that's all the questions I have, Mr. Chair, and I thank you for bringing them in to clarify.
Absolutely, Senator, and thank you. On the amendment, on the main amendment as amended.
I had a point of information or inquiry to the author of the
Yeah, so
the
just ask him to
amendments.
yield, Senator? Sure.
Okay. Senator San Augustine, if you could kind of clarify, because I was kind of reading back, also doing some research on this amendment, and I think you may have mentioned it earlier, but just for complete clarification, I saw an article in August of 2024 in the Pacific Daily News, and this was during the last budget discussions. It says, an amendment by Speaker Therese Terlahi proposes to appropriate $9 million from fiscal year 2025 excess revenues over projections to the Chamorro Land Trust Commission for infrastructure at a tract of land in Jigo that could be divided into as many as 166 lots for residential land leases. Terlahi said if the projected excess revenues are available early enough, first quarter hopefully, we might be able to issue residential leases by 2025. Is this similar to what you are trying to do in your amendment? Or?
Senator San Augustine, do you yield?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The similarity is there, but this amendment is prioritizing the first 20 million. If any money is received and is identified as excess, like surplus, it automatically goes directly to GMH. So any amount of money up to 20 million goes directly to GMH to help them out. So there's similarities, but not the same.
Does that satisfy your question, Senator Montanani?
So you're saying it has been done before? Thank you so
Yes,
much. Thank you for the clarification.
Sure. And on the amendment as amended, anyone wish to speak on the amendment as amended? Senator Perez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise in support of this amendment. I actually think that, so in the committee of the whole, it was mentioned that the accounts receivable, sorry, it should be accounts payable. Yeah, so I think that even with the $7 million that we appropriated in a previous amendment, this 20 million would go to help pay off a lot of the accounts payables. There's still a balance there. And so I do appreciate this amendment. So I stand in support. Ms. Masi.
Ms. Masi, any other senator wish to speak on this San Augustine amendment? Senator, you may close. Oh, excuse me. Senator Chalayi, you're recognized.
Yes, it is Masi. I appreciate this amendment to give unobligated fiscal year 2026 general funds to GMH in the amount of 20 million. And we hope that GMH is going to give it to accounts payable, but the amendment itself says operational expenses. But they need it in all areas. They said they're 28 million short in operations, 29.3 million short in CIP projects, and 25 million short in accounts payable. Accounts payable are those businesses who, in good faith, have been waiting, and they told us 16 million of the 25 million have been waiting over 90 days to get paid for services and supplies or goods, and they're unpaid. So I support this amendment that's going to give GMH money in FY2026, but they're going to wait until December. And if this much excess comes in, or whatever excess comes in by the end of December, that's when GMH is going to get their money. And my only issue is that the amendment that's ruled out of order for excess FY25 revenues that are already sitting in the bank was ruled out of order when that could give GMH some money, at least after the budget's passed in FY20 immediately. They don't have to wait until December. But this is a larger amount. They're going to wait until December. But my issue is just that I wish our budget took care of this better, because this means that those vendors who've been waiting 90 days already, by that time will have been waiting over 210 days to be paid. It's really, really a disservice, because the GMH CEO said, if the vendors are unpaid, then sometimes they won't do business with GMH anymore. And then GMH goes to vendors who are more expensive, or less quality, or different quality. And this has an impact on the care for the patients. So I absolutely, whatever money we can get to GMH, let's get it. But this will be real if this comes in December. And so I have no problem giving them in December additional money. But as you know, they were counting on at least $20 million in ARP funds. That was taken away, and they are left with CIP projects incomplete, and they are left with accounts payable. And I'm very much worried about pitting one business and giving businesses tax breaks while we can't pay businesses who've actually produced the services and the goods for the people of Guam. So, but with that, the budget does not provide any other sources, so, but I do support this amendment. Thank you.
Senator Chalahi, on the amendment as amended, does anyone like to speak on the amendment as amended? Seeing and hearing none, Senator Speaker Frank Blunt Jr., you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I guess query with, I have a question, if the author can yield to the question. And the question, sir, is basically, with this authorization, will they be authorized to be able to satisfy some of those concerns and concerns that have been perennial, have been along with, you know, existing with the hospital for the last 3-4 years, that have been neglected? Will that be able to be taken care of with this $20 million?
Mr. Speaker, does the author yield?
Yes, Mr. Chair. You know, I look at it this way. In every budget cycle, agencies are given a check, a lump sum check. This is additional funds. Yes, it will fulfill and cover whatever they need. It's all about management. As long as they do what they should do, properly manage the funds, they'll be able to pay and catch up worth $20 million worth.
Speaker, does that satisfy your inquiry?
That does satisfy, and I'm grateful with that because, again, some of these issues have been around, you know, for the last 3, 4, 5 years, and have not been addressed, have been neglected, and this gives them the opportunity to be able to use that money, finally. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Speaker, on the amendment, the author, Senator San Agustin, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No need to close. I just ask my colleagues' support. That's truly helped GMH in another form.
Certainly. So the amendment has been proffered, and we're currently voting. Are there any objections to this San Agustin amendment as amended? Seeing and hearing none, amendment passes. Colleagues, we have hit white smoke on the chapter for Guam Memorial Hospital, Chapter 3, Part 1. Colleagues, we are now going to Chapter 3, Part 2. I will now ask for Office of Finance and Budget to introduce how they arrived at the funding levels for public health, and then open the floor for questions. Director Guerrero, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Okay, for the Department of Public Health, again, our base funding for their ceiling for FY26 was utilizing the FY25 appropriation level. And we increased the local funds of about 1.7 million. And in the federal match, it was increased by 13.5, and this is input from the department. So the overall increase in the bottom line for public health is 15.1.
Does that conclude your presentation? So that is the presentation on OFB on the budget levels assignment for public health. Are there any questions for OFB on how we arrived at this number, and any questions or comments for the body? Any questions? Seeing, okay, Senator Chalahi, you're recognized.
Yes, again, I'm going to ask that we should have DOA and BBMR here as we have done for the other chapters. But Mr. Guerrero, I believe when we were doing revenues, they represented that in their letter to us that the public health appropriation match is short for Medicaid. And without that match, we will lose out on $14 million worth of Medicaid. And so I just want to ask you why that's not included in this. Why are we going to give up the $14 million in Medicaid?
Yes, Senator. Again, in the formulation of these departments' budgets, we are in consultation with the departments. And in this case, we kind of like contacted public health and says, you know, we realize that we noticed that you have an increase in the federal match of about 13.5 million, and I believe the corresponding local match was 3.3 is what they were asking. But we also asked them, I said, you know, looking at your historical trend on a lot of your federal matching programs is that they never maximize their federal grants, thereby leaving, I wouldn't call it lapses, but available funds in the local share, which we were told that as long as they get the lump sum authorization, they would be able to move the local match to address whatever federal match increases they would get. So that's why we did not do the corresponding 3.3 to the 14 million that they were asking for.
All right, well, thank you. That doesn't sound like what they represented to us. And again, because they didn't use all of their federal funds, we're not going to match the maximum of federal funds that we can get. To me, is not a good policy. And it's only $3 million. And there's, you know, Medicaid is going to go, if we can get those matching funds, to paying providers, doctors all over Guam. It's going to pay GMH for the services that they provide. We are going to put an additional burden on Medicaid for some of the programs that were passed during recent months that we've added on, or they're proposing to add on. And yet, we know that we need to cover as many people under Medicaid as possible. The grant money or compact impact money from the other islands, we're not going to receive any of that. And Medicaid is what we count on to cover those patients. Otherwise, GMH is left in an even deeper hole than what they have now for unpaid. They've been able to really scramble to try to cover those. So I feel very uncomfortable. I mean, I appreciate your response, but Mr. Chair, I feel uncomfortable again without either public health or DOA here, because DOA represented we are going to lose $14 million because we haven't matched it with a mere $3 million in this budget. But if I could ask another question, you're saying that they did not use all their Medicaid money, or they do not intend to use it by the end of the fiscal year? Is it Medicaid that you're saying they're lapsing?
Public health administers various grants that require local match. They have different funding ratios. They have different dollar amount requirements. I'm not too sure, but I do believe, and I think in the last couple of years, that they probably did not max out on the Medicaid. I may be wrong, but the last time I think I saw was they did not match. Did not maximize. Like I was saying earlier, they have the ability to move these funds around to programs or to these federal programs to maximize whatever expenses they anticipate to maximize. Not all programs are ever maximized in any given fiscal year. So that's the beauty of giving them the latitude to let them decide where they should put these monies to maximize their program efforts.
Yes, I agree, but a lot of these, they may not, they're like special, for example, the Medicaid, you can't use that appropriation part for any other part of public health's budget. And I see that in some of the other ones, not all, but a lot of them, where they're restricted from using the funds. So you think that they're going to be able to get $3 million kind of out of this appropriation that is status quo, that they can find an additional $3 million to pay for the $14 million in Medicaid? What are they going to cut to do that? Do you know? This is status quo, you said, right?
Yes, ma'am. But again, information we got from public health was that like they've done in the past over the last several years, wherever they're short in a local match for a federal match program, they were able to cover it by shifting these funds around. And to my knowledge, at least for the last couple of years, I am not told or have not been apprised that any of these federal grants were short of a local match. That's what they told
I know,
me.
but they told us that in the revenue that we will be short for FY26. They also, at their hearing, Public Health at the budget hearing requested that if they didn't, that they could only do their allotted budget if they received continuing appropriation or carryover provision. I remember they made that very clear. But is that provided for in this bill?
Senator, like all the departments and agencies in this bill, we did not put language to any department or agencies to authorize the carryover. Now, if these departments are lapsing from their current year appropriation, I mean, again, it goes back to me and how we appropriate things. And is that if these guys are lapsing in the hundreds of thousands or even in the millions, it's already an indication that either we're appropriating too much or they just don't have the ability to maximize the appropriation in the given year, thereby incurring these carryovers. So if you want to allow them to carry over these funds, I don't have a problem. But again, remember, when you carry over, you're taxing current year cash, and you're also giving them the ability to spend money they couldn't spend the year before. And again, then as we go into the next year, they're appropriated the same dollar. So again, not only are they trying to expend the carryover, they have another challenge to expend the current year appropriation, which is, we find it difficult. That's why these departments are lapsing, they're requesting carryover year after year, because it just goes to show they cannot spend the appropriation in any given fiscal year. So they're generating all these lapses. So I'm of the opinion that when I see that, I even told the chairman, I said, sir, I think we're appropriating too much for these agencies, not because we don't want to appropriate, but based on their track record, they can't spend it. So that's where I'm having problems, Senator, with trying to figure out a good ceiling for them.
All right. And so you believe that for public health, despite their request for a carryover provision, they don't need to carry over, and that despite DOA saying they need 3 million more to get the 14 million more in federal Medicaid match, and that they're going to be okay. And you know, I remember in previous budgets or years that they have a very complex explanation as to Medicaid lapses. And we allowed them to lapse Medicaid because all of that was predicated on they have to send out the bills, they have to approve the bills, and all of that goes all the way through the fiscal year and to the end. And so, you know, they're dealing with prior fiscal year bills still during the next fiscal year. So, I mean, they gave us a very suitable explanation that we found it comfortable to give them their continuing appropriation. They also are one of the agencies that told us that some of their federal funds have actually been cut. And so I just think the more Medicaid, and Medicaid is one of those things I don't want to play around with. So if we can give them more Medicaid, I'd like to see them get it. But if you're saying that they said they could handle this without a carryover provision, I remember them saying at the hearing they absolutely needed the carryover. Otherwise, they're dead in the water. And then if we're not going to lose Medicaid, then, you know, we have no one else to ask, so we're going to have to rely on you. But I'm telling you, if we're going to be 14 million short of Medicaid, we're going to end up, again, like shooting ourselves in the foot at the hospital, because that's the funding source that's going to help them to succeed, Medicaid, because we've boosted it, it's reliable, and it's not like Medicare. They're going to be able, I mean, it helps the hospital tremendously and all the other clinics that are in dire need. So
Yes, Senator, just to be clear, I didn't say they didn't need the carryover. I'm just saying we didn't authorize it in the bill. Again, I'll go back to my stance. They are and you're absolutely right. The difficulty in them spending these funds is because it takes so long for these billings to get adjudicated. Sometimes 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months before one bill is adjudicated. It piles up at the end of the year. But at the end of the year, you have this enormous balance that they didn't use. So comes the next fiscal year. The process is the same. Unless they improve the process of how to get these billings out in a more timely manner, you're always going to get this big bundle of lots of money at the end of the year. So yes, they can use the money, absolutely. But I honestly think that unless they do something with the system to get these billings out in a more timely manner, we won't see these large sums of lapses at the end of the year. And you know, I agree with you 100%, but this is just what happens with the program. And again, according to them, they say that they said that the level we gave them this year would be sufficient to cover whatever federal match is required to match.
If they got the continuing appropriation, right? That's what they said, but, all right, Tito Sumasi,
Thank you.
Sumasi, Senator, on the public health chapter that is being recognized at this point,
I have,
Chapter 3, Part 2.
yeah, public
Yes,
health.
Senator
Just
Antonani,
for-
please proceed.
Just for everyone's information, and as the committee chair that has oversight over the Department of Public Health and Social Services, I did have dialogue with them, discussions with them regarding this budget, and they provided some amendments that will address what Senator Terlahi is referring to, and it's already in the committee drive. And it does relate to this continuing appropriation for public health, for MIP, Medicaid, as well as operations. And so that will be coming up later. But just letting you know that they've seen the budget, and they didn't ask for any more or any less, but they did have several amendments that they would like me to proffer. So thank you.
Tito Sumasi, Chairwoman, Senator Montanani. Senator Perez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question for OFB. So in regards to the general fund, what does it cover warm bodies, or can you tell me what exactly did DPHS ask for in the general fund to fund using the general fund?
The total $59.7 million is for operation of the department, which includes personnel and all other costs associated with running the agency.
Okay, so would you say that it's pretty much a bare bones type of budget in regards to the personnel and contractual needs?
When we say bare bones, we're talking about a status quo from FY2026. I also mentioned that we increased the budget by $1.7 million in the general fund. So it's not necessarily a status quo budget, but we increased them simply because of things like retirement increments we took into consideration, like we did for all the other departments and agencies.
And also housing and, is it homelessness too was included in the budget for DPHSS?
No, the appropriation for homelessness is not in there. The reason why, Senator, it was not in there, because it was a new program that started, and I believe the budget was already passed before that program was actually implemented.
Okay, so the increase, can you repeat what the increase is for?
No, we just put the increase, we reflected an increase which was supposed to cover retirement and increments.
So if, let's say, I know there's an amendment coming up, so I just wanted to clarify if that money was restricted, would that have an effect on the personnel?
A portion of this $59 million, Senator, is to cover personnel costs. If you restrict this amount, below what is required to pay personnel salaries and benefits, then yes, you would be affecting personnel.
Okay. And so this would also affect contracts as well?
Yes.
Okay. How about utilities?
Everything that was presented in their budget, which includes personnel, contracts, supplies and materials, equipment if possible, utilities, capital outlay, and probably drug testing, is all encapsulated in this 59 million.
Okay, and as far as vacancies, are there a lot of vacancies in the
It's
budget?
included in the 59.
And their intent is to hire with those vacancies, is that correct?
Yes. If you're talking about like positions now that are going down the tunnel with them trying to recruit, it does cover those positions. If we were told that they are being actually in the process of recruitment, we consider them kind of filled and funded it to a certain degree, yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other senator on the public health section? Okay, we'll go to the amendment section, the amendments for this section.
Legislature Committee of the Whole is back in order. At this time, we're recognizing amendments, and I would now like to read out the amendment and recognize the profferer. So this is SVC L23 P46, and this is offered by Senator Shelley Calvo. Senator Calvo, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I rise to present my amendment to substitute bill number 44-38, which appropriates $500,000 from the fiscal year 2026 general fund to the Department of Public Health and Social Services for the implementation of the Meals for At-Risk Households Act of 2025, Meals Act. This amendment, Mr. Chair, supports the execution of Public Law 38-23, which enables the Department of Public Health and Social Services to implement the Restaurant Meals Program, RMP, a public health initiative that enables eligible elderly, disabled, and homeless individuals to access hot, ready-to-eat meals through approved food vendors. The amendment includes the language that ensures that funds are used solely for this purpose. These provisions are intended to preserve the integrity of the appropriation and provide continuity in program development. Mr. Chair, this is basically to ensure dedicated, protected funding for the Meals for At-Risk Households Act of 2025 by allocating $500,000 from the FY2026 General Fund appropriation to DPHSS for its implementation. So, Mr. Chair, on line 23, page 46, to amend the bill, I'd like to read, there's already a set stipulation, but I just wanted to add to the language. So right now, it says on section 19, Meals for At-Risk Households Act of 2025, the Department of Public Health and Social Services is authorized to utilize fiscal year 2026 appropriations for the purpose of funding Meals for At-Risk Households Act of 2025 pursuant to Public Law 38-23. I'd like to add the following language, Mr. Chair. Notwithstanding any other provisions of the law, the sum of $500,000 from the general fund appropriation in section 1, part 2 of this chapter shall be exclusively utilized for the purpose of funding Meals for At-Risk Household Act of 2025. The funds appropriated in this section shall not lapse and shall continue to be available until fully expended, and shall not be subject to any transfer authority of a Magaʹhågan Guåhan or any inter-fund borrowing or used for any other purpose.
Response, Senator Calvo.
Thank
On
you,
the
Mr. Chair.
amendment, is there anyone who would like to speak on the amendment? Senator Perez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the director is not in support of this language. They have yet to receive any approval of the plan. So they did submit the plan, but it is yet to be approved. They are asking that they are given the leeway to work within the budget. They are willing to, with the funds that they're given in the general fund, they're willing to make it work, but restricting the funds is not a good idea. And so they would like to put in a lockbox is basically will tie up the funds especially since the plan has not been approved, and to keep it idle is not the best. They need that as a management tool, basically. They oppose it being put in a lockbox because they need the flexibility with the money that they have been appropriated in the budget. Considering that it could have impact to the personnel that are already staffed, and if they need to cut staff, that would affect the rollout of this program. So it could have a negative impact on the rollout of the program. So they ask that this lockbox not be, that this funding would not be tied up in a lockbox.
Excuse me, Senator Perez. I'm going to take a 1 minute recess. Legislative Committee on the whole is now back in order. Senator Calvo, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and appreciate the comment of my fellow senator from Bargada. And we can make some technical amendment to the amendment, but prior to that, I'd like to read the recommendation from the Magaʹhågan with regards to the program. Can I?
Yes, please proceed, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this letter was directed to the Speaker of the House, Speaker Frank Laws Jr., and it says, "Half a day, Mr. Speaker, the Meals for At-Risk Households Act of 2025 addresses food insecurity in Guam. This bill is a pivotal step forward in our mission of ensuring the well-being of Guam's most vulnerable residents. Bill 78 also introduces the Restaurant Meals Program, RMP, expanding food access for our elderly, those with disabilities, and those who are experiencing homelessness. These recipients, numbering in the thousands, continue to face barriers to accessing nutritious meals, not solely due to financial hardships, but because of the challenges in food storage and preparation. Whether dealing with physical limitations, the absence of a stable home, or other barriers, no individual should be deprived of the ability to obtain a hot, ready-to-eat meal. The enactment of this legislation establishes the critical framework to remedy the inequity. For these reasons, the bill was signed by Magaʹhågan. Honorable Governor of Guam, Lourdes A. Leon Guerrero.
Jesus Masi, Senator Calvo, and I also yield my time to you in the event that you need any additional time. So are you going to
Thank you,
proffer
Mr. Chair.
some technical amendments?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So with that concern, to address the concern of our good senator from Bargada, my fellow senator from Bargada, I'd like to add, I'll just read everything. So notwithstanding any other provision of the law, the sum of $500,000 from the general fund appropriation in section 1, part 2 of this chapter shall be used. So we strike out exclusively utilized and then change that strike it out and use the word used, USED. And then for the purpose of funding meals for At-Risk Households Act of 2025, the funds, so we're going to strike out the word appropriated and change it with the word allocated. So it will read, the funds allocated in this section shall not lapse and shall continue to be available until fully expended.
On the amendments to the amendment, anyone wish to share or speak? Senator Tadek, will you recognized?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make sure that the cross-out is shall be exclusively, so exclusively is struck out, so utilized also should be struck out.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Senator Tadek. On the amendments to the amendment, anyone wish to speak? Seeing and hearing none, are there any Senator Perez?
Yes,
You're
so
recognized.
I don't know if that necessarily undoes the lockbox, because the appropriation shall be used for the purpose of funding. So, yeah, it doesn't quite, I think, address the lockbox issue. Perhaps if I can have a quick moment with the proffer of the amendment to the amendment.
Sure, 1 minute recess.
Thank you.
The committee of the whole is called back to order. Senator Calvo, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Going back to the amendment,
Okay.
I guess I'm going to have to withdraw the first amendment to the amendment, so we can actually exchange it to another amendment to the amendment, because we're changing, because I already mentioned.
All right. Okay, there's a motion to withdraw the amendment to the amendment. Any objections? None?
And now, the amendment to, this another amendment to the amendment, because we're changing some of the words. So it will now read, notwithstanding any other provision of the law, the sum of $500,000 from the General Fund Appropriation in Section 1, Part 2 of this chapter may be, so we'll strike out shall and change it to may. And then we're going to retain the words exclusively utilized. So it will read, this chapter may be exclusively utilized for the purpose of funding Meals for At-Risk Household Act of 2025. And then we proceed to still strike out the word appropriated and change it to allocated. So it will read, the funds allocated in this section shall not lapse and shall continue to be available until fully expended, and so on and so forth.
Okay, so the amendment to the amendment is notwithstanding any other provision of law, the sum of $500,000 from the General Fund Appropriation, Section 1, Part 2 of this chapter may be exclusively utilized for the purpose of funding Meals for At-Risk Households of 2025. The funds allocated in this section shall not lapse and shall be continued to be available until fully expended, and shall not be subject to any transfer authority of the Magaʹhågan Guåhan or any inter-fund borrowing or use for any other purpose. On the amendment to the amendment?
Oh,
Senator
yes.
Perez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise in full support of this amendment to the amendment. I thank the good sponsor, my colleague from Barrigada, who's willing to work with me on this, and I'm definitely going to help to assist to make this program come to fruition. Sintus Masi.
Thank you, Senator Perez. Any other colleague on the amendment to the amendment? Senator Calvo, you can close on your amendment to the amendment.
Thank you. I truly appreciate that. And this is what you call working together. And I truly appreciate the notion that was raised by a good senator, my neighbor from Barrigada. And thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, on the amendment to the amendment, any objections? No objections? On the main amendment? Anyone wish to speak on the main amendment? Senator Calvo, you can close on the main amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As we conclude discussion this amendment, I want to reaffirm the purpose and urgency behind the Meals for At-Risk Household Act of 2025 and the Restaurant Meals Program it authorizes. This program is not new to the national landscape. It is already implemented in many states, and many more are actively working to submit their state plans for approval. Guam has a statutory authority under Public Law 38-23, and we now have the administrative and executive support to move forward. The governor and the director of Department of Public Health and Social Services have both expressed their support for implementation here at our own backyard in our community here in Guam. I thank my colleagues for their engagement and thoughtful questions, and I respectfully ask for your support to ensure the Meals for At-Risk Household programs begins with the resources it needs to succeed. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate, and thank you, colleagues.
Thank you, Senator Calvo. Any objections on the amendment? Hearing and seeing none, amendment passes. Colleagues, that closes out, two more amendments? I'm sorry, my apologies. This one? These two? Okay. The next amendment is SB 44 TMT P46. And this is introduced by Senator Therese Terlahi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so this amendment was going to appropriate the excess 2025 revenues, but as you have seen, most of these revenues have already been appropriated except for 3.9 million. But it was going to go for the refurbishment of the Department of Public Health and Social Services Magaʹhågan building. As you know, the assessment was being completed, and the chair has shared that the assessment is complete now, but it's clear from that assessment that the 5 million is not enough, of course, to cover that building, but and the 3.9 is even worse. So I'm just going to withdraw this amendment in hopes that we can find funding either later in the budget or throughout the year to get this Magaʹhågan building rebuilt and the clinic put back in Magaʹhågan, so that those nurses who testify that they have lost patients are not receiving services, that they will be able to get back to that as soon as possible. So I'm going to withdraw both of these amendments, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Terlahi. So Senator Terlahi is withdrawing both amendments, SB 44 TMT P46 and SB 44 TMT P46 II. So this now will close Part 2 of Chapter 3. Now we're on Chapter 3, Part 3, Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Center. Is there any questions or comments on this chapter? And we'll bring in OFB. Senator Matanani here, right? We'll take a 1-minute recess so we can get OFB in here. The committee on whole is called back to order. Senator Matanani, you had questions for OFB, correct?
Oh, I was going to go and wait for OFB too.
Okay. So we got OFB in here who will be explaining both Part 3 on Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Center. Mr. Guerrero?
Thank you, Vice Speaker. Yes, for the Department of Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Center, the total appropriation out of the general fund is $8,928,061. Out of the Healthy Future Fund is $10,057,832 for a total of $18,985,893. In the general, in both general fund and Healthy Future Fund, the bottom line was increased by $843,000. And this was to cover the detox and rehab program and inpatient detox, which is the New Beginnings program. So that's where the increases were or are in the department's FY2026 budget.
Thank you, Mr. Guerrero. Any of my colleagues have questions for OFB? Senator
I have a
Matanani.
question. Yeah, do you have a comparison of what was in the EBR versus what the legislature is appropriating?
Yes, just give us a second. Yes, Senator Metanani, the difference between what's in the EBR and what's in the bill, proposed bill, is $633,927.
Lower, higher?
Lower.
Ours is $600,000 lower.
Lower than the EBR, yes.
I see. Okay. Yeah, I don't have amendments right now, but I do have amendments from Guam Behavioral that will be coming up in the miscellaneous provision, so thank you.
Any of my other colleagues have any other questions of OFB? Senator Parrish, you're recognized.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So what percentage did they get from the Healthy Futures Fund?
Give me a second, Senator. Down, there, right there. You passed it. You passed there. Oh, that's down.
Okay. So they take about, here, what their whole percent? Here, let me do the math real quick. This is Chick-fil-A. About 6.
No, but okay, Senator, on the JIPWIC's total percentage of their appropriation out of the Healthy Future Fund is your question, correct? Okay, that totals about 65% of the total appropriation, including the programs in the bottom.
Thank you. And do they receive revenues from fees? Any type of fees?
Senator, I'm not aware of JIPWIC collecting any fees for any services they provide. Maybe their federal programs might, but I know at least on the general fund side, I am not aware of any fees being charged or collected.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other colleagues? Okay. And on this section, Part 3, there are no amendments for Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Center at this time, Part 3. So Part 3 is closed. We're now Chapter 3, Part 4, Department of Integrated Services for Individuals with Disabilities. Mr. Guerrero?
For the Department of Integrated Services for Individuals with Disabilities, their total appropriation out of the general fund is $2,329,297. Out of the Healthy Future Fund, it's $3,846,612 for a total sum of $6,175,909. They also have a federal grants in aid amount of $2,085,461. Their bottom line increase over FY25 is $469, which will include the cost to cover retirement adjustments and increments for FY26.
Thank you, Mr. Guerrero. Any of my colleagues have any questions for OFB on Department of Integrated Services for Individuals with Disabilities? No questions? There are no amendments on this section as well, so we'll close Part 4, Chapter 3, Department of Integrated Services for Individuals with Disabilities. Colleagues, that concludes Chapter 3. We are now in Chapter 4, Unified Judiciary. Mr. Guerrero, you can go ahead and proceed, sir.
Okay. For the Unified Judiciary appropriation for FY26, the total funds out of the general fund amounted to $43,760,143. Out of the Safe Street Fund, they get a total of $29,993, and that will total $43,790,136. They also get, we also funded the drug and therapeutic courts, which is an allocation from the general fund appropriation of $889,319. And they also get an allocation out of the general fund, out of the Safe Street Fund for the Family Visitation Center of $29,993. For the Sex Offender Registry, they get an allocation out of the general fund to fund this program. There's no specific amount, but it is indicated as such sum as necessary. That's in the provision. For the electronic monitoring program, they have a direct appropriation from the general fund of $868,157. For the Building Judicial Fund, fiscal year 25, we just have language here that shall report the Judicial Building Fund for fiscal year 26 budget. And the last appropriation is for the Guam Criminal Law and Procedure Review Commission. There is an outright appropriation of $378,845 from the general fund. The total increase for Judiciary over FY25 level is $780,656, and that is to cover the cost of retirement and increments for FY26. And that is all.
Thank you, Mr. Guerrero. Do any of my colleagues have any questions for OFB on the Unified Judiciary? Senator Chalahi.
Yes, thank you. I just want to, so I see in the budget that, so the general fund is now funding all of the drug and therapeutic courts that started out by grants and now have been taken over by general fund, almost up to $1 million. And then, but the electronic monitoring program, Mr. Guerrero, can you just tell us, has this increased since last year?
Yes, Senator, I do believe it is an increase over FY25 appropriation.
Do you know by how much?
Give me a second, I'll find it for you. Yes, Senator, just for clarification, for the FY25, the level that they're actually showing is $868,157. So it's the status quo going into FY26. Okay. It's the same level.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to check. So this electronic monitoring, I think, has been at this level for a little while now. It's, but from what I've heard, it's very effective at, I mean, it's effective for its purpose, that it is successful in monitoring these people. They have they've made rules at the Judiciary for which cases they're going to use it on. But I feel like any expansion that we can put towards this electronic monitoring will allow them to better monitor others. And while we have a very crowded prison, and I know they're sensitive to even further crowding that prison, but if they release people who have any risk of further violation or who they put under restraining orders, especially in family violence cases, I really want to make sure that they are able to use this program as much as possible. My other question, Mr. Guerrero, is in Section 9 of the bill, it again appropriates for the Criminal Law and Procedure Review Commission. This originally in Public Law 36-119 was a one-year task force. They were supposed to review the criminal code, put the recommendations back to the legislature, and that was it. And as we talked at the time, the Judiciary had agreed to take this on, but then it continued for another year, and now we're in, since the 36th, it went through the 2 years of the 37th, and now we're in the 38th, and it looks like it's going to be extended another year at least. I just didn't think this was supposed to be a permanent program, and we were just supposed to get their recommendations. And I know that they've made a lot of progress. Is it very much necessary to continue this for another year when this was supposed to be a temporary law review done, send it to us, and then senators decide whether they're going to implement those changes or not? Did they indicate to you how much longer it's going to take them? Or are we just going to make this like a permanent task force?
Yeah, they gave me no indication of how long this program will continue being funded the way it is funded, but it was funded in FY25. It was also reflected in the EBR, and we went ahead and again appropriated the same level simply because it was a status quo level from FY25.
Speaker
Yes.
Blas, you have a...
I know we did appropriate this in FY25.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I can answer the
Pardon?
inquiry from the gentleman.
He has a, I guess, your
I can answer
answer
your
to your
question.
question. The answer to your question. Speaker Blas has the answer to your question.
Okay, as the author of the legislation and working with the Unified Judiciary on the criminal law review, you're right. The task was slated, to be actually for 2 years, but as a result of the work that they have before them, I can tell you that as of this date, while they were tasked to review both Titles 8 and 9 of the Guam Code annotated, they have completed about 75% of Title 9 in its review and are working towards the remaining of Title 9 and then working on Title 8. The Judiciary has found value in this review commission because there are a lot of statutes relating not just to the criminal statutes, but the process and the criminal review that have been taking place that have not been updated for literally decades. And now based on technology and with case law, they're making strides, and we will want the funding is necessary so they can continue the work and being able to provide. As a matter of fact, after we're done with the budget, I am going to share with the body the voluminous file that have been provided that I guess the discussion right now is whether or not we're going to create over 200 bills, or do we create an omnibus bill to be able to address a lot of them. And that's just for 75% of the work on one of 2 titles that they're working on. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Speaker Blas. Senator Talahi, that answered your question, ma'am?
Yes, I guess in part, it of course gives us an update on their work, but again, these funds are going towards full-time employees to do this work, to review 2 titles of the code. We do have also a commission with the compiler who can assist, but I am looking for, I mean, we've been receiving the reports regularly, so we can see the progress. I just am questioning, is this, it was intended again to be 2 years, as the author said, and I think we're going on the 4th year now, and so maybe longer. And I just want, I'm not gonna make any amendment, but I just wanted to point that out, that, yeah, I think they should just wrap it up and let's see, because the work of changing the code is going to also, you know, it's a lot of work that we're going to have to do over here on our site. So I think we should get to doing that. And anyways, it's just that this 378, if they're done with this task, that we could allocate that for the electronic monitoring, and then we could keep more of these people who are being released under surveillance, under monitoring, as opposed to the only methods available now to be released, you know, and check into probation, or, I mean, yeah, that they could be more monitored with technology. So I'd like to see that increase, and so I'm just hoping, yeah, we will see the product of this commission soon. And I want to thank the work of the commission. We have some very, very good people who've been appointed to work on that. And so everything that I've seen so far, it looks good. And I'm just looking forward to it completing, so we can use that money for electronic surveillance.
Thank you, Senator Chalahi. Any other colleagues have any questions for OFB? Okay, there being none, we'll go ahead and go into the amendments. We have one amendment. And this is SB 44 CMDL 19 P52, introduced by Christopher Andueñas and Tina Rose Muñoz-Barnes. And Ranking Member Muñoz-Barnes, you'll be speaking on this amendment.
Mr. Chair, Vice Speaker, this amendment, I'll go ahead and read the amendment before I proceed with the presentation. It's on page 52, line 19, to add a new section 11 to chapter 4 of the bill to read section 11. A new section 2104 is hereby added to chapter 2 of title 7 Guam Code, annotated to read continuing appropriations of authorization, notwithstanding any other provision of law, the allotted but unexpected balance of funds appropriated to the Unified Judiciary of Guam each fiscal year shall not lapse and shall continue to be available until fully expended. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for giving me the opportunity to speak on this proposed amendment as proffered by the Oversight Chair on OFB and myself. This amendment is straightforward. It provides a continuing appropriation to the Judiciary of Guam, a standard practice each fiscal year, and places that authority into statute. And unlike the executive branch agencies, the Judiciary is exempt from BBMR's allotment release control. Just like us, the legislature, each month the director of the Department of Administration deposits into the Judiciary account the amount allotted to the Judiciary. Put simply, without this continuing appropriation authority, the Judiciary would be unable to use funds it has already received but not yet spent. Mr. Chair, Vice Speaker, for fiscal year 2025, the Judiciary projects about 30,000 in lapses, and even these funds are earmarked for ongoing improvement projects at the court, such as the elevator maintenance, the roof repairs, and the SACS system update, and that I do believe is their computer security system. Vice Speaker, this is placing this in statute is not new or extraordinary. The legislature has already granted the Guam Public Defender Service Corporation, a semi-autonomous agency, this authority. If it is appropriate for a semi-autonomous agency, it is all more necessary for a co-equal and independent branch of government. The court must be able to manage their own resources without delay or interference, just as the legislature does in order to meet their constitutional responsibilities. And I'm going to respectfully ask my colleagues to support the adoption of this language, Situas Masi. Again, on behalf of the Oversight Chair and myself, authors of this amendment.
Thank you, ma'am. Any of my colleagues want to speak on the amendment? Senator Gumatata, you're recognized.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I do rise in support of this amendment in support of our sister branch, the Judiciary of Guam. And again, as the good senator from Manila mentioned, it's nothing different than what would be done at the executive branch and obviously here in our branch in the legislature. They do have lapses projected, my understanding, and it's earmarked, and they do know how to use their money effectively. And so with that said, Mr. Chair, I rise in support of the amendment proffered by our committee chair and the good senator from Manila.
Thank you, Senator Gumatata. Anyone else on the amendment? Senator Chalayi, you're recognized, ma'am.
Thank you. I have no objection to the judiciary continuing its appropriation. I'm just concerned because we didn't give this type of authority even to public health. I guess the oversight chair says there's a later amendment to do that. But we were told that these continuing appropriations were removed throughout the bill, that no one's going to get this. But I think they're necessary, and that if it's possible, it should be done. But when it was GDOE who was begging us for more appropriation and the ability to use their continued, this exact same continuing appropriation authority, they were pretty much chastised for not spending their money. And we were just told, GDOE told us they were short-staffed, struggling with procurement, and they were forced, and they were very creative in moving those monies around, diverting almost everything they had over towards, so that we could access, that Guam could access the ARP funds. And so they did that, but in the amendment that was passed for GDOE, they're not going to get those funds back to be used as they are needed in critical areas. They're being restricted in using their continuing appropriation only for the purposes of sports facilities and none of those other critical purposes that they outlined for us. So I just find that inconsistent on our part that when the judiciary asks, they get a continuing appropriation with no restrictions, but when GDOE, who told us the struggles and how they are being underfunded, they get restrictions put on their continuing appropriation that doesn't help them in the underfunding that they've stated that they face.
Thank you, Senator Chalayi. Any other member on the amendment? On the amendment, you'd like to close?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Vice Speaker. Again, on behalf of the Oversight Chair and all of B, I hope that my colleagues will consider this measure and support the efforts of the judiciary. Senator Masi.
Thank you, Ranking Member Barnes. Any objections to the amendment? There being none, amendment passes. Colleagues, we have already completed Chapter 4. Tomorrow morning, we'll go ahead and start off with Chapter 5, the Executive Branch, and we'll start our Committee of the Whole again at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. Okay, 8:30 a.m. tomorrow morning. 8:30 a.m. tomorrow morning. We stand in recess.